Nancy Pelosi has now taken aim at both the Republicans and the Democrats by calling for a reconstruction of the 25th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. I'm Kevin McIntyre. You're listening to episode 8 of the Podfather Show. Nancy Pelosi is at it once again, only this time she has seemingly put things into sights to take aim at both the Republican and the Democratic parties, thinking way ahead, possibly 3 or 4 steps ahead of the game, which is a little unusual for Nancy, considering she's usually chasing problems and presenting answers instead of trying to become proactive, if that's what you want to call it. Because again, it is coming from Nancy Pelosi. And whenever she's presenting something, it's usually, well, no, always one-sided and extremely biased. In Nancy's news conference on October 9th, she had suggested that new legislation would be passed and said that she wanted to present a bill that would form a new commission or a committee that would give powers that were previously reserved for Congress to the members of this commission or this committee. That's scary, regardless of who's presenting that type of talk to present a bill like that. Anytime any politician wants to do something like that, I find that alarming. I wouldn't care if it was President Trump himself that would come out and say something along the lines that would have the effect of removing or bypassing powers of Congress and giving those powers to other people. I'd be a little bit upset about that. And I'm a Trump supporter. Why would I be upset about that? Because it's just not right. Congress is in place for a reason. Congress has those powers for a reason, and it has been that way for an extremely long period of time, with these powers specifically since the 1960s, but Congress has had those powers since the creation of our Constitution. And now Nancy comes along and thinks that she wants to change all of this. In the event the U.S. president should or would become mentally or physically incapacitated or otherwise unable to carry out the duties of office, Congress has the authority and power to transfer the power of president to the vice president. And that transfer of power can either be temporary or permanent, depending on the severity of the president's mental or physical state. Let's delve into this a little bit deeper. Congress can't just come along and take away the president's power and give it to the vice president. In the 25th Amendment, specifically the fourth article of the 25th Amendment, which Nancy's wanting to reconstruct here, it basically says that Congress has the power and authority to protect what's called continuity of government. In other words, to ensure that our country continue to operate in a productive fashion. Should the president become ill or physically unable, or such as in a coma, or mentally, cognitively unable to perform his duties in a fit manner, Congress can then step in and say, okay, for continuity of government, COG, we're going to transfer the powers of president to the vice president. The vice president would then be sworn in as president in severe situations and become the president, and then someone would step in and then assume the role of vice president, which in most cases would be the Speaker of the House or Nancy Pelosi. Now, if the vice president were to likewise become mentally or physically unable to fulfill his duties of vice president and president, then Congress may transfer those powers to the next successor, and so on. And then the vice president's powers gets transferred on to the next successor after that, and so on. And this process continues down an extremely long list of politicians, military commanders, which form the United States government. And it's like this so that in the extreme, unthinkable circumstance that perhaps something would happen and we could lose, the majority of our politicians which run the government, that our government can still run. That way, essentially, no matter how many politicians we lose in that successor line, there's technically always someone that's next in line to legally step up to assume the role of President of the United States. And it has been this way since, I think it was 1965, when there was an attempted assassination on a president, and then ratified in 1967. I believe those are the correct dates. And then it was elaborated on and expounded even further with more in-depth powers for transferring the powers, more in-depth powers and authority and procedures. It kind of spelled everything out a little bit better, with more up-to-date language, more up-to-date scenarios and things like that, after September 11th, 2001. And that's when we had developed what was called COOP, I guess you could say. It's a continuity of operations plan. And it was inactivated after the September 11th attacks. So what Nancy's wanting to do, and I'm sure there's going to be many Democrats that think, oh, this is a great idea. We need this in our government. We need to be able to remove a president if he's unable or unfit to serve as president. We already have that. Nancy's not wanting to do anything new or creative in the sense of trying to fix something. We have continuity of government. We have a plan to continuously provide the people of the United States with a presidential leader. And Congress has that authority, that power. What Nancy's essentially wanting to do, take that power and authority away from Congress and then formulate a commission or a committee of 17 members, a bipartisan committee of 17 people to then have that authority should the situation arise. So should there be a situation where a president becomes physically or mentally incapacitated and cannot serve as president, instead of allowing Congress to do their job, Nancy's saying that we should have a committee of 17 people who get to decide that, and they vote on it amongst themselves. And she's saying that by being bipartisan, that as if that's some cavalier suggestion that she's making, that those people would be both Democrat and Republican. Well, you can do the math. Even if that were a good idea, which it's not because we don't need it, 8 times 2 is 16, so there's an off person, which, yeah, you would technically need in order for a vote to be fair in case there were a tie, but you and I both know that already that odd person, the 17th person, is going to be a Democrat. That's exactly what she's wanting. I mean, she's not going to volunteer or suggest that that person be a Republican or even what would be more fair and independent. She would never suggest either one of those two things. I mean, let's be real here. Let's be honest. She's going to suggest that person be a Democrat, or if she were in the position to elect those people for that commission, then it would unfold to where that 17th person elected for that position would be a Democrat. That's just how it's going to play out. It's just another way of stacking the deck. And that's exactly what this is. Stacking the deck because the last 4 years haven't gone your way. You've thrown everything you can possibly think of at the president to get him removed out of office. From stretching truth so thin that it looks like an episode of Stretch Armstrong to complete fabrication and lies because you've got nothing else to throw at him. You've done everything you can to get him removed from office, and nothing has worked because nothing's been true. So in true Democratic fashion, Nancy thinks that, well, we'll just take powers away from Congress now and give them upon ourselves. I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell is what she's wanting to do here. It's absurd. I can't believe people weren't throwing shoes at the woman on the stage when she was making these suggestions. Who in their right mind would think that such a thing was a good idea? Are you essentially saying that Congress has failed us? Congress isn't qualified to perform these duties? That we need to pass it on to other people? Why have Congress at all? Let's just remove them completely, and we'll let this committee, this commission of 17 people decide everything. That's essentially where this is going. If Congress doesn't do what you want them to do, you create a committee of 17 people that you know will do what you want them to do. I'm losing my mind over all of these shenanigans and charades going on with the Democratic Party over the last year. I can't keep up with it. It's insanity that we're sitting here watching all this unfold. We're watching these stunts by Pelosi come about and the things the Democratic Party is doing, and we're allowing it to happen. What the hell? Where are our political leaders? Why aren't they doing their job? This is nonsense. Well, Nancy goes on to say that this isn't because of President Trump. Yes, she did say that. She did start the speech by, but you and I both know the real reason she's wanting to do this is because she's tired of losing. She's tired of the Democratic Party losing. And she believes, obviously, that if she can gain control over that type of authority, then come November 3rd, win or lose for the Democrats, she'll still get what she wants. And just like we said in an earlier episode, I believe Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party had selected Joe Biden to be the front runner for the Democratic Party for the 2020 elections because they know he's not cognitively fit to be U.S. president. I've already said this, said it weeks ago in another episode. The Democrats know that if they can get him in to be a president, if they can get him elected, he wins the election, then they will, a few months later, I bet he doesn't last 6 months. They'll come out and say, well, he's not cognitively fit. Kamala Harris becomes president. Nancy Pelosi becomes vice president, and they get what they want. She knows nobody's going to vote for her. The Democrats wouldn't even vote for her. She knows this. But they might vote for Biden, especially if, Kamala's, his campaign partner for vice president. But they remove Biden, especially now that they will have the authority to do so if this bill were to pass. And then she can step in to be vice president. Kamala becomes president. She gets what she wants, which is the power-hungry grab she has been after all along. She doesn't dislike Trump. She dislikes Republicans. She wants Democrats to rule the country, which we all know is a mistake. But let's say the election goes in favor of Trump. Well, then this would become about Trump. This statement that she had made here regarding the change to the 25th Amendment.
This is not about President Trump. He will face the judgment of the voters. But he shows the need for us to create a process for future presidents.
It absolutely would become about Trump. At that very moment in time, the morning of November 4th, we wake up, we realize Trump's won the election. She's still going to go forward with this. It would then be about Trump. So this is a win-win for Nancy, which is why I say she is finally, taken aim at both the Republican and Democratic parties, because it doesn't matter who wins the election. She's suggesting this bill to have this new authority to attack the presidency. When Congress won't do what she wants them to do, she's just going to have a party of a committee of people to do it for her, completely sidestepping the way this country is ran and doing it the way she wants to do it. Of course, I have a very sad and depressing feeling that the Democrat followers would go along with this. But if things were to turn, and the Republicans would later out a Democratic, president and vice president using the same powers that be, then I bet they would be crying to have this new authority removed and dismantled. Ladies and gentlemen, if this podcast falls upon your ears, it is absolutely imperative that you vote Donald Trump for the 2020 election. This isn't about whether or not you hate Trump. This isn't about whether or not you like Trump. This is about thinking deeper and understanding and realizing and comprehending how all of these new bills and powers and rights and everything that the Democrats are wanting, how they will truly affect us later on down the road. Stop thinking about the now, because let's say this bill's passed. It doesn't just stop there. I mean, it's in place forever at that point. You don't get to undo it when it should go against something that you want. So these are the types of things that you need to consider when voting Democrat or Republican. I mean, these things can backfire on you. If you're a Democrat and you're going to vote, Joe Biden, come November 3rd, you need to consider these things. I mean, yeah, it may sound peachy to you right now, but the tables turn. These same powers can and absolutely will be used against you in the political arena at some point in time. And there'll be absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. Period. It's not the Democrats, or it's not the Republicans that are trying to pull these shenanigans. It's not the Republicans that are trying to get all these crazy things changed. It's the Democrats. So if you don't want these things changed, come November 3rd, vote American and vote Republican for Donald Trump. Even Vanity Fair brought up this whole 25th Amendment thing back on September 18th, 2019. Even they seen then the potential for using this in a different way than what Nancy's suggesting. I mean, this has been a talk that's been going on for over a year now. They've probably been sitting back behind the curtains for a while, discussing things. How would it work? How would it get? I mean, I bet this bill's already written. They're just getting ready to present it. They're tired of losing, and they will do anything and everything they can, including cheat and manipulate and deceive, in order to win. And more often than not, that's the only way the Democrats can win. One thing I would like to add that I noticed throughout the Nancy's news conference on October 9th, when she had gave this speech regarding the 25th Amendment, is her lack of proper use of her face mask. I know that's a little bit of a footnote type subject here, considering everything, but I just wanted to point out that when you go back online to watch the video, notice, if you will, that Nancy Pelosi is constantly pulling the mask down below her nose, even though it's over her mouth, therefore undoing any good that could have possibly been done by putting the mask on in the first place, using the mask only for political purposes and for a prop, so that she can say, I wore a mask. But it doesn't do any good to wear that mask if that mask is hanging down below your nose and being used as more of a chin strap than anything. Please head over to YouTube and check out our video of this speech, as we have already uploaded it, and be sure to follow us for future episodes. I'm Kevin McIntyre, and you've listened to episode 8 of the Podfather Show.